Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and having us. We're looking forward to this conversation. So this is a great follow-up from today's earlier conversation with Kevin on building a department of yes. We're talking about how to build teams that can solve modern infrastructure and security challenges, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Adalyn and Gina Rosenthal to talk about it. So before we get started, would love for you guys to expound a little bit more on your intro, talk about the setup of your organization, what you do, and what your function is.
So my name's Ada. I work at the security team here at Teleport. My background's primarily been in IT, but recently moved over to security earlier in the year.
So my name's Gina, and I founded my own company right before the pandemic started. Great timing. Right before that, I left VMware to do that, and so I have about 20 years going between the different big infrastructure traditional vendors such as EMC, Dell, VMware, and some startups, as well as being a customer and being a sysadmin. So the teams I talk to a lot of times now, I have a product marketing consultancy, are other companies and how they're helping their customers build these teams. So here are a lot of customer stories.
Okay, so we have two experts here, and if we want to opine on building infrastructure and security teams, and we want to talk about today's challenges, you two are really well equipped to talk to us about them. So maybe we can start there. Tell us about some of the challenges you find infrastructure and security teams facing today.
So for us, we're a growing startup. There are many challenges with working in small teams, such as like addressing essential work streams and high impact projects, but at the same time with limited resources. So examples would be determining what are acceptable risks and addressing valid security issues, but at the same time not losing focus on these high impact projects like important compliance projects or say our quarterly goals that would improve our security posture.
So maybe before, Gina, you answer that question as well, would be wonderful to hear kind of the steps that you guys have taken to addressing those challenges, because I'm sure that lots of startups in this room, elsewhere, also face the same constraints of limited resource availability while still having to secure their infrastructure and promote security within the org.
So internally, we do work in like small decentralized teams. For us, it's more about learning to work with different people. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, expertise, and also time zones. So we try to find ways to work as cohesively as we possibly can. For us, we go through ways like design reviews or code reviews and whatnot, and try to write things down. We think that transparency is key at times.
And Gina, it would be wonderful if you would please also talk to us about some of the challenges that you see, I guess, your clients in turn facing, and knowing that you've had a 20-year career and seeing some of these challenges evolve over time would be interesting to hear not only the small startup problems, but some of the larger companies that you work with.
Yeah, I think the startups that I work with actually work with very large banks, like very large multi-distributed infrastructures. I think that's one of the bigger things that I see is, number one, you've got the entire infrastructure, how we build infrastructure, what is infrastructure, what are the tools we can use, has changed drastically in the last 4 or 5 years. So now when you apply the old things we used to do, I love the talk this morning about that. Oh, I guess we're just... Well, we love the talk this morning about that is what the security team was. That's what sysadmins did. We were like, no, developers, stop doing crazy things so we can keep it in control and you don't break it. And the developers were like, whatever, I got a credit card now, I'm going to do what I want. And they did what they wanted. But now we're getting to the point where, number one, cloud services are more mature. The infrastructure, the actual components of the infrastructure allow companies to do cloud-like architecture on-prem. So you can do more of the things everybody's wanted to do. So now what I see happening is a big fight sometimes between the developer and operator teams. The developers have figured out they're going to do it this way, and all of a sudden you want to come in as an operator and be like, we really do have to meet these security standards. We have these responsibilities, and that's kind of challenging. So the whole idea of DevOps has to return to the original meaning where it included ops and everybody's working on a team. And I think sometimes the teams are having a hard time getting to that, and then just deciding, what tools do I use? Should I really go with a tool where we don't have any access controls? Or like, do I go to a tool? What do I do to make sure this is the most secure environment possible while not making any friction for my teams?
So maybe we'll take each of those in turn. First, the tool selection, and then kind of this tension between developers and ops and developers and security. On the tool question, like, how have you found your companies or your clients to be dealing with that challenge and making those decisions?
So my clients are helping their company, their clients in turn, right? I think one thing that is coming up more and more is infrastructure as code. Being able to put everything as code and run it that way from an infrastructure perspective. And that is something that's very interesting to me. It comes to the DevOps things again. For some reason, developers and even sometimes the way things are marketed to operators don't think that operators know how to code. Yeah, we do. We write Perl scripts. I was doing Jumpstart, Kickstart before lots of y'all were even born, probably. So we definitely know how to code. And that's one of the things I find a little challenging is that we've got people like me that have a long history of dealing with things through the years and resolving things that should be table stakes now. But then we've got people coming into the industry. We kind of need to show them, give them that information we have so they never have to deal with it like we did. They can just go on and do the cool new things and make it better. And that probably answers a DevOps question too. But that's where my customers are having a hard time is how do we market to people that need to do infrastructure as code when the operators need to trust that this way developers have been doing it is the right way to go now. They need to bring their experience to this side of the house now.
Well, Ada, this is probably an interesting question for you because one of Teleport's core tenets is not making people have a trade-off between, the developer experience and core security. So how do you think about that tension within Teleport or more broadly?
So for us, I think we just recognize that security is a shared responsibility, and that we try to incorporate security throughout the entire process. So for us, for example, security starts at like the design stage. We tend to go through a RFD process, which stands for like request for discussion, I believe. Basically just a design document that states your what, why, and how you're going to implement something. And then we open up the discussion internally on what is it that we're actually going to do. And then I think it helps increase visibility, transparency, and also facilitate conversation on things that are concerns and making sure it gets addressed before implementation.
And we're touching on it a little bit, but one of the ways that lots of folks have dealt with this is shift left, DevOps, then DevSecOps. Can either one of you guys speak to that trend, the challenges that the move towards DevSecOps unlocks, and how you've seen that the rise of that role, I guess, or that function play a part in companies that you work with or Teleport itself?
Okay. So I guess how I've seen it is it just keep the whole talk this morning about not being the department of no was so great. And if you're able to do that shift left and make things as code, everything just goes faster. If you're able to find a tool that is able to work with anything, the tools all working together, so you can check everything in and check it out again, and you have this entire process that just works. Then you're working on the higher level problems instead of coding and chasing and hunting down the little individual problems, especially when it comes to security. You never have to worry about, do I have the right ports open and all of the other ones are closed? Or is the VPNs we're using, are these good? You don't have to worry about that because you've set an intention for what good looks like. Everybody works towards that by using it in a CI/CD process, which I think is awesome.
And obviously this is a trend that many companies are seeing, but what does this mean, or what are the implications from an org design perspective? Just getting everybody on the same page.
everything goes faster. And like, I think the biggest thing is number one, you're working together to deliver a product, to deliver a service, whatever that is. And you're not dealing with the boring things we've always had to deal with. You're not, back in the day, we built CDs, we had CDs to build a server, and we got to the point where we could automate that. It was great. You get everybody, you know exactly what the developer needs, and you're building that platform and securing that platform for your developers to be able to write the code you need to do to sell whatever it is you're trying to sell or provide the service. Everything goes faster, and you're not fighting with each other about who's right and wrong. You're just building and going, and it just makes such a big difference when you see teams that start rolling like that.
And Ada, same question on shift left, DevSecOps, any kind of implications that you've seen in your org?
So I think it's just pretty much similar to what I said earlier. Like, security is a shared responsibility. Internally, we just naturally have engineers that are just curious. They point things out when they should be pointed out. And we ask questions. We maintain that transparency within our culture. And I think that that helps to address these security issues early on versus addressing it when things go bad.
And Gina, you're talking about the shift to multi-cloud. Would be really helpful if we double down on that or kind of dig in a little bit more fulsomely. And as more teams move to cloud services, how do you think about taking on those shared responsibilities?
I think it's really important because what happens is you're trying to figure out, if you're building a workload, where's the best place to put it ultimately. And if you have teams that are working together, then you're able to have an understanding of all the different places you could put it, different public clouds, on premises, on an edge, in a car, wherever it might be. Everybody's working towards the same solution, but you have maybe a little bit different code to build the infrastructure as code for each single platform. Then you can build on each other's code if you're all sharing, if you're working collaboratively. If you have the security team in on that as well, you have them understanding the little nuances of all those places. So developers are freed up to write what has to be written to make the product.
I guess, how do you, from a culture perspective and kind of interdependencies and working together, like how do you engender an org that is best equipped to do this? And would love to hear answers from both of you.
So for us, we continuously work with people from many different expertise. So we do have shared cloud infrastructure and whatnot. I think that everyone does have a say in how we do things, just simply because we are a small, decentralized team. And I think that, as we grow and scale, we'll have to continuously address this issue of like, how do we designate responsibilities and whatnot.
Gina, would love to hear your perspective.
I think that's a really good answer, what she just said, of having all different types of people on the team and figuring out how to make it shared and making it a safe space so when you're curious and you see something, that's actually, everybody understands that's good for the team and it's good to drive that forward.
And I guess, who are the major stakeholders in your orgs that need to make sure that that is a shared responsibility?
I think most of our, like team leads usually have like an idea of like what it is that we should be more responsible for, or what it is that we should have more input for. I mean, at the end of the day, like we're all, subject matters in our own way, and I think that helps contribute to solving and having responsibility as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it also just kind of depends on how the organization is kind of set up. It's great for a small organization that's just starting out because you guys get to shape that culture and make sure it doesn't change, and I hope y'all are able to do it. I've heard from other clients and watching, especially with a big, very, very siloed organization, seeing how they're trying to start building teams that go all the way across and deliver services is very hard for them, and I think it's hard for the employees. The benefits are there at the end of it once it starts falling all out, but what you're hoping to happen is you're getting the best out of everybody that has a different type of responsibility, whether it's security or even economics, cloud economics, anything within that team. But I think it's a lot of hard work to get it there because we are so used to being siloed and so used to having some contentious relationships with counterparts, even in this between the silos.
Not to put you on the spot, but that's kind of what we're trying to talk about here today. It's like how to build those teams that really can break down silos, irrespective of title. Have you seen any strategies work in particular, other than obviously the higher order goal of trying to cross-pollinate and share responsibility?
One really, really, really siloed organization that I know about, I guess I could talk about them. They have, they completely changed things so that they have now, instead of a silo for storage, a silo for VMware, a silo for everything, they have architects that reported to the CTO's office. And there's one main architect, and what the architects are assigned then to the different workloads or applications that are being developed. And within those, the architects kind of decide, what are we going to have on our menu that you can build with? You could use this cloud, this server, this application. That's all they have. But what they have with the individual architects that are on a team, like on a core team with all the different stakeholders, the developers, the business, the financial people, everyone that's responsible for the success of that workload, that application, they're allowed to go back and say, hey, this guy way down here that's actually pushing the buttons and building the servers, he wants to be able to use this particular thing. And I tested it. It's going to work with all the 3 cloud providers, all of our security measures. It'll be great. That gets funneled back up into a core team. Of course, it's still really siloed, but at least there's a way, a path.
Building the early pathways.
Yeah, have to build the pathways because there just weren't pathways. Even though they've created teams to make it better, they're now having to figure out how to teleport that information from one to the other.
Okay, well, that was really helpful, and I'm sure it resonated with many people in our audience. But I'd love to turn to what's ahead. So just, I guess, as you think about the future, what do you think organizations will need to do to keep pace with today's infrastructure challenges? Like, what's ahead?
So I think decentralized teams will probably stay pretty common. I think it is a continuous issue of how do you define designated responsibilities without losing that decentralized structure.
And what about you, Gina?
I agree with that. I think that's going to have to become the de facto way to do things. Might be a little controversial here, and it might be because I've had a 20-year career. I think it's really important to bring people with experience on the older client server side of the world into this very scalable, very, very cloud world. Because really the infrastructure piece of it's not that different than it was. We have better ways to do things. We have the tools that as old school operators we've always wanted to have to do things. So I think it's really important not to flush that experience out of our systems, but really to bring it along. And so it's important for the operators to hear the thing that we have to be the department about, yes, and to take the skills that they have and move forward. And that's probably the biggest thing. I think that has to happen.
Well, so we're getting towards the end of our time here, but to close things out, would love if each of you would share one final piece of advice to the audience on how to build teams that are equipped to solve today's security and infrastructure challenges, whether it's something new that we haven't discussed already or emphasizing a previous point. Would love to hear your kind of takeaway message.
For me, for instance, would be learn continuously, learn how to adapt. Like very much how we approach with COVID and whatnot, we learn to be decentralized and also not to be afraid of new challenges.
I love that point about COVID. That was really good. I like that. I would say unlearning some of the things we've learned in the past 20 or 30 years of computing that really we are here to support as IT, as operations organizations, which includes security. We're here to support our business stakeholders. And if we do that, make it easy for them, then they're gonna be happy with us. And I really, we have to unlearn everything we learned in silos. Ops has to love dev, dev has to love ops, and we have to all get together and make things happen.
Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, Ada and Gina, and thank you guys so much for joining us on this panel.
Thank you so much. We have a little bit of time left if anyone has any questions in the audience. Yes, one over here, Mr. Michael.
Hi, thank you so much. Mary, I wanted to ask you a question. I'll put you on the hot seat. What are you seeing kind of with an investor perspective, fairly broad on the market? What are some of the trends that you're seeing in DevSecOps to address some of these concerns?
I think it's really the move towards shift left. And not to beat a dead horse, but like really making sure that there's a cross-pollination of ideas, of best practices, and, from a leadership perspective, making sure that that's actually enforced across the org. But, the number of DevSecOps orgs that I see and the increasing leadership and honestly, institutionalization of the function, I think is a leading indicator, obviously, that's like of increasing import across many different companies. And I think whereas, there used to be silos for security, or that used to be I don't know if it was ever a nice to have, but it used to be lesser thought of. Now it's a priority because obviously, one security breach kind of breaks down an entire business.
Thank you.
And then anyone else?
I also work with a bunch of decentralized developer teams also, and one thing that I run into a lot of is shadow IT and redundant tool sets. Everybody comes to the table with tool sets that they like to work with, which is great. How do you solve that problem of making sure that everybody's happy, but also using a cohesive tool set?
Might be a good question for you, Ada, since you were the one who talked about decentralized teams.
I think even internally, we also face that issue too. Like, how do you ensure that, say, someone's using something without you not knowing? And I think we try our best to implement things like vendor security, be more aware of what vendors we have more visibility on ensuring that there's actually some sort of review process. I think even our IT team has like clever ways of approaching this issue as well. Like looking into products like IAG or even like products like Teleport. Like, how do you have like some sort of centralized place where you can have some sort of idea of what do we have?
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we're just out of time, so let's give them one last round of applause.